We're going to start. Welcome back to the Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast. It is a very cold Tuesday over here in the UK. Tuesday at the time of recording, by the way, everyone, just in case it doesn't roll out on the same day. But first things first, my tag team partner joins me fresh from our review of SmackDown yesterday. Mr. Burrows, how are you, sir?
I'm good, my friend. How the devil are you? What a time to be alive here in cold, wet, dreary old England. Nothing changes for us.
No,
Well, I
nothing.
can't wait to get there, fellas. With that note,
Well, on that note, you may have, the ones on Spotify that are not watching on YouTube, you would have heard the dulcet tones of somebody who, as me and Andy were growing up watching the world of the WWF at the time, and at the time when Sky first come out, we was excited to have this Sky dish. One of the first voices that you heard telling us the news, where they were going to be, is our guest right now, who's venturing over, and he did mention this before he went on there, for the first time since he was over with the late, great Lord Alfred Hayes himself. It is Mr. Sean Mooney. How are you?
I am doing fantastic, fellas. And thank you so much for having me from across the pond. And it's cold here too, in Arizona, if you can believe it. But yeah,
27 degrees, Sean, may be
yeah,
cold to you, but we would
yeah.
snap your hand off for that right now over here.
Your hand, your neck, your legs, everything.
So what's it like in February since I'll be over there soon?
See, hit and miss. It can be, yeah. Bring
Bring a
all
jacket?
clothes. Bring many jackets, Sean. That's all I'll say to you. Bring quite a few
All right.
jackets, woolly hats, and gloves.
Yeah,
You're in Arizona and you step off
Well
of the
taken.
plane in London, you may
or
be in for a bit of
Manchester,
a
or
shock.
wherever it'll be. Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, you're in for a shock. That's for sure.
Well, I'll bundle up, I promise.
You should do, definitely, and thanks so much for coming on. It's great to hear. Great to hear from you again. Like, we just mentioned it. Like when we were growing up as kids, and we listened to you on prime time, and we had it over here, and it's so great to be able to talk to you about all of that, which we will get into. But we did speak, I'd say, briefly before we started, and you mentioned that you don't necessarily keep up with the product as much anymore. But the main thing I was going to say is nowadays the wrestling world, not just the WWE, but other wrestling companies as well. It's all about streaming, and Netflix is this big thing now with the WWE. Is that going to take, I mean, how can you take a global entity and make it more global? You put it on Netflix, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, they're on Peacock now, which is the NBC streaming. I mean, everything is just blown up. But I think it's just a natural order of things. That's the wonderful thing about professional wrestling is it is never going away. And the genius of Vince McMahon when he started all this is that he was always ahead of the game, the entertainment game. You think back now with pay-per-view.
Yep.
They began, and remember, they had closed circuit television. You used to go to a theater to go and watch the events. And Vince was already ahead of that, thinking about pay-per-view television, which was really, nobody really knew that much about it. And he started broadcasting these events on pay-per-view. It became a standard with sports. You saw some of it with boxing, but professional wrestling is what really blew it up. So it just depends on how it's delivered to you. What you really have to be concerned about is the product, and that's another discussion. But as far as how it is brought to the world, it's just going to get better and better. I mean, now you can carry it with you everywhere you go. With the way we are with our phones, we can't be without our phone for 2 minutes. I saw something yesterday that says the average person is on their phone 4.5 hours a day. And I think that works out to be 70 days a year. Imagine that. You're spending 70 days, complete days, just looking at your screen and doing this. So, it's amazing. I think that it's just the way of the world, and it's just going to keep changing as it goes.
Yeah, definitely is. But you are venturing over. We just mentioned this in the intro, venturing over to the UK for the first time for the love of wrestling. Our good friends over there, we
Yeah,
know them very well for the
yeah.
wrestling convention of the weekend. How much are you looking forward to that? Not only to coming over to the UK, but to see wrestling fans again that perhaps, a bit like me and Andy, haven't seen you for many, many years.
Well, guys, there's a number of reasons I'm really excited about this. You just mentioned a couple. At the top of this, you said how I'd not been over there since we went over for one of the events. I may have a couple of times, Lord Alfred and I, and of course the rest of the team went over there. the one I remember so fondly is that 92 SummerSlam
Yeah.
at Wembley, which I still, when people ask me, that's the first thing that comes to mind. That was the greatest event for me. And we did so many other awesome events, but just the fact that we were over there, uh, really on a stage like that kind of introduced the WWF, WWE, as we say now, to the world. I mean, Vince had laid the groundwork for, really getting the product out of the United States, and the UK was where it all started. So for me, going back over there, and we talked briefly before that I was certainly known here in the United States with the WWF. Uh, but with Sky TV and the Coliseum home videos, which for a lot of people, that was the only way they got to see our product. And I did a lot of the play-by-play on those. I hosted them along with Alfred. That's another story. We can talk about some of the crazy things that Lord Alfred and I did with those videos. But I didn't really get it at the time because I was just doing my gig. And the event center, which was my main job with the company, was to tell people that events were coming. It was prior to when I got there. Gene Okerlund
Yeah.
would go to these arenas, travel around the country, and he would, backstage and between the shows and the taping and stuff they would do, Gene would be backstage, and all day long he would be there with the superstars, and they would do these 2-minute little interviews talking about, the event going to the Horizon Center in Chicago or whatever it was. And it was brutal. Can just imagine that Gene would stand there all day after, day really, and travel to these places and have to do these interviews. It drove him crazy because it was just so much work beyond the other stuff he was doing. So when they brought me in, somebody had come up with this brilliant idea to do the event center, which would customize markets, but do it in a more efficient way. So the way they did it is that the superstars would do whatever their angle was, interviews. They would do them in a generic way, and then I was the bridge. I would say, coming up at Madison Square Garden this Saturday night, Hulk Hogan taking on the Ultimate Warrior. The Warrior can't wait to get the Hulkster in the ring. Boom, go to the interview. I would do my off the look, that kind of thing. He would do 30 seconds, come back to me, the bridge, and I would bridge to another match. So it was a much more efficient way to do. It was brutal on me. I would sit there for 4 days a week, 8+ hours a day doing these markets. And we did say 90 to 100 at that point when they were doing A, B, and basically C shows throughout the country. So it was just a very efficient way to do it. So getting back to the point of the UK, when they made contact and had a deal with Sky Television to show, which I think you had to pay for back then.
Yeah,
it wasn't some free cable.
Nope.
So a lot of people really couldn't afford to have it, but those that could, we customized it the same exact way. I would do markets for shows that we were starting to send over there. And Gene was brilliant. He giving me ideas of, how to do this job, which made him so good, is that and we didn't have the internet back then. You couldn't get on your phone or your laptop, but I would get the travel guides and I would look at, areas they were going to and find, pubs that were around there, different landmarks, and personalize it, say going, to Chippy's pub on Saturday night, make sure I hope I see you there. And so it made it very personal to people. And I started getting letters from the UK, and I didn't get this kind of stuff that really here in the United States. So it was a real connection. And when we went over there for that SummerSlam, and I remember, I was used to being at the hotels and people, you've been there, guys, where, I mean, hundreds of people would be out, wherever you were, people would just come there hoping they'd get a glimpse of somebody. And I remember we were sitting at a bar which was very open where people could see in. And there was a bunch of people there out. And I was with Bobby, I was with Gene, Gorilla was there. I don't know if Jesse was, but we're all sitting at this table. And I was the bench guy. I was, when people saw these guys, they went crazy for them. And I remember this group came in there and they said, "There's the lad. There's the lad." And I'm, what the heck are they talking about? And literally they like mobbed me And I was just, the other guys are kind of like at the tip looking like, what the hell? I mean, it's Mooney, you know? And I was like, what the hell's going on? Well, I figured it out after talking to a few people. They said, you're the one you talk to us.
Yeah.
So it was like a love affair began right then. And it just, carried on from there. And as it kept getting bigger and bigger, uh, but that was where it all started. If people want to look back to where we really became the world wrestling entertainment or federation, as I still call it,
Yeah.
that's where it really started. It was just amazing.
I remember one of the first events. I think I was like 5 or 6. The battle at the Albert Hall, the battle at the Albert
Yeah.
Hall. Alfred Hayes was doing his little bit up on the balcony. I've still got it on my Coliseum home
Yeah.
video upstairs. I've still got a lot of my Coliseum home videos. Sean, what do you think that people like Lord Alfred Hayes, Gorilla Monsoon, maybe not so much Bobby Heenan because they kind of seen where the industry is now. What do you
Yeah.
think they would make of where wrestling is right now? From where they were and what you guys done was tremendous. If you could spend another 10 minutes with Lord Alfred Hayes, Gorilla Monsoon, and say to them, hey, wrestling's now on this streaming service called
Yeah.
Netflix, and you can watch Raw on your phone like I did today. I was out at work, but I could. What would they make of where the industry is today?
I really think that they would applaud it because they loved professional wrestling and didn't want it to return to basically the carnival days. They wanted to see it continue to grow. If people know their history, Gorilla was at one point considered, well, I think he was going to be I didn't say buy it, but was going to be was one of the ones that Senior was thinking of allowing to take over the company. And Vince convinced him that he was the better person to take this company
Didn't they
over.
fall out over that? I think I remember reading something or watching something because Gorilla was. I remember seeing a documentary about that where Gorilla Monsoon was like,
Yeah,
"I'm going to take over," and that
yeah,
did cause friction between him and Vince McMahon. But he was meant to be. Yeah, I remember seeing a documentary about that.
yeah. No, it didn't last, obviously, because Gino stayed around for a very long time and had a lot of respect for Vince and what he did. But imagine at the time, you've got this upstart really who's flipping the table. And it really came down to the point where it was saying, okay, you're either in or you're out. As he went one by one to these territories, the ones that were smart and went with him prospered. The other ones were destroyed. And Vince gets a bad rap in that sense, but think about it. These guys wanted to do the same thing. They just
Mm.
didn't have the moxie or whatever you want to call it, and the drive and the ability and the never quit attitude that Vince McMahon had. I mean, he was broke a few times. That if people didn't come in and give him money, it would have never happened. That we wouldn't be sitting here talking if it wasn't for what he did. So yeah, sure. I like with Gino, there was a gorilla that people, there was thinking there was this friction, but once things started to happen, it's amazing how success changes things with people.
Funny that.
And Gorilla certainly prospered as with everybody else. His lordship was the same way. These guys were old school, and that's talk about is when if you want to say, well, like what's different today. And I had my podcast Prime Time with Sean Mooney, where I got an opportunity to talk to pretty much anybody who was still alive because we've lost so many, but of these personalities that were major forces in professional wrestling. And when I look back and people ask me about interviewing these guys, the difference is you look at the guys today, they're incredible athletes. They are very talented, but there isn't that element where a vast majority of the wrestlers of that period came from. And if you listen to my podcast, pretty much every one of these guys has a story that is just so compelling, so amazing, where they came from nothing. And imagine back then when you tell your parents, I want to be a professional wrestler. And what are you kidding me? You can't make any money doing that. But they had such a love for it, and they had this dream to do it that they never gave up. They would go in front of 100 people at a crowd or less, And they just kept showing up night after night after night, getting in the cars, driving with these old guys, these old school guys, teaching them as they went along, uh, basically making enough money to eat. And they, the ones who stuck with it, the ones who had the talent, just kept moving up along the line. And then something came along called the World Wrestling Federation. And that changed everything, where you could make this incredible amount of money. But I think what is different today is you don't see that. A lot of these guys you see with the WWE now, they're D1 athletes. They're come from MMA. It's a whole different thing. They're incredible athletes, but their stories are very different. They grew up as, privileged athletes who have never not had anybody tell them that they suck. Or you're the worst thing I've ever seen, or somebody gets stiff on you because you didn't make the right move and they break your nose, and you remember that. So it's a different world. When I got there, it was the Wild West. When you had a beef with somebody, it still got settled backstage. It's not that kind of business anymore.
No, well, unless your name's CM Punk, and then
Right, right, yeah, but there are exceptions, right?
Yeah.
But these days, who knows if it's a work or what? I don't know, but hey, it sells tickets, and he is an entertainer, and it works. So,
yeah,
right,
he is. He certainly is, and he's having the
but the
time of
main
his
point
life.
of it is it's not the same. It's not the same
No,
business by any means.
it certainly wasn't, Sean. Another thing I wanted to discuss quickly with you, we're going to talk about your action figure in a minute, but
Yeah,
WrestleMania nowadays, back to when it was. I mean, now it's 2 nights. It's still this global extravaganza that
yeah.
it always was. When you look back and when you was at did you ever think like WrestleMania, like it was the be all end all? I mean, Vince took a massive risk on WrestleMania one. There's no doubt about it. There was a big risk. Then it was, I think, closed circuit. I think WrestleMania three that was closed
Yeah, we
circuit.
mentioned the theaters earlier, didn't we?
Yeah,
They've
the
done two
theaters and
simultaneously.
Yeah,
but
oh, yeah.
look,
Oh, the LA,
Yeah.
Chicago, I think it was
Mm.
that was just before my time. Yeah,
yeah.
it's
When you
crazy.
were how sort of busy was WrestleMania week when you were doing it? Because now it's like a 2 week thing, but I'm assuming it was still busy for you guys even back in those days.
Oh, yeah, by far. And it was still the biggest thing ever. Everyone that they came up with was bigger than the year before. And it's amazing how everything evolved back then. I've seen tapes of the early TV tapings that they did where the arenas weren't lit up. They were dark. It was just like the old boxing matches where the lights were all centered on the ring. And Vince had this idea of why the hell are we doing that? Because we want to see how the crowd's reacting to this. And then boom, they lit up the arenas. There was two cameras, a hard camera, and maybe another one that was closer to the ring. So they said, well, let's get guys with cameras on their shoulders. So that all evolved. So when WrestleMania would come along, they tried out new things, and I love to talk about my first one was when we went to uh, New Jersey when they had it in there, and at the casinos.
Hmm.
And I remember that week they sent us down there. We were there 3 or 4 days before, and it was the first real fan fests. And you talk about for the love of wrestling. Well,
Mhm.
all this stuff has evolved from when that started, and it's we did most of our work before we even did the pay-per-view before WrestleMania. So in Atlantic City we were doing fan fest where we did superstar panels that I hosted. Went out and I hosted a run that they did on the beach along the boardwalk. We had signings with guys where they could take pictures. People could take pictures, and and I remember thinking back then, God, this is brilliant. That these people could really, for the first time, reach out and literally touch their favorite superstars and have a little conversation with them. So, you see it now and it keeps getting bigger and bigger, but nothing matches how that began and how that evolved to what it is today. But back then it was way ahead of its time. Nobody was doing that. Now you see how many shows they have a year. The
Come
guys
on.
can earn a pretty good living now if they're in decent shape and they want to travel. I mean, Hacksaw, who did the show with me for a while, one of the reasons that he didn't want to do the podcast anymore because he was traveling every week, going to all these shows, and they make good money doing it. So it's amazing what it's turned into.
Was the Sean, when you were involved back in the days with the WWF, I got into an argument last week, a heated discussion, shall we say,
Oh, it's
with
always a
someone.
heated discussion is always
Yeah,
nice,
we'll
isn't
sort
it?
of heated
Nobody
discussion.
wants to debate anymore. It's
No, they
terrible.
don't. Honestly, there was the reaction from Hogan at Raw last week, and I made the comment to someone: if it wasn't for him, amongst others, we probably wouldn't have wrestling as we know it today. The
Yes.
point I was trying to make to them was, being someone that's 44, nearly 45 years old, he literally put a company on his back, albeit with the push from Vince McMahon, and carried that company. Now, I get the stuff that's gone on in the modern day era and what he's done and what he said. I wasn't getting into that side of the
Yeah.
argument. The point I was trying to make to these people was, without him, I don't think we have professional wrestling as we know it. What's your opinion of what it was like back then getting on the Hulkster train? Because Hulkamania literally ran wild back when you guys are there. And from where he's perceived now, is that something that surprises you?
Yeah, I think I couldn't agree with you more about the Hulkster. I would be interested to hear what their counter was to that. You can, as you said, you can talk about today or things that Hulk had said in the past, and but let's put any of that aside, unless that was their argument that he's just not a good representative or something. But yeah, absolutely. And I remember, I guess he was on the outs at the time with the WWE, but they did a top 50 wrestlers in the professional wrestling. When they were doing all these countdown shows, and I think they had Hulk in there at 21 or something. And I was like, what? Top? Are you kidding me? Top 5? You can argue. I mean, come on, because absolutely, if there's one person responsible in this world for the success of professional wrestling, it is Terry Bollea.
Thank you.
The Hulkster,
Yeah.
absolutely, no question about it. And if you were there, and I remember the time that it really hit me physically was when I had first started with the WWF, and I went, some of my first house shows that I went to that were TV tapings, so that the Pact and Hulkamania, the wave was just peaking. And I remember being in the arena and Hulk Hogan coming out, and they blew the roof off the arena, and I physically felt in my chest that rush of humanity. And I remember the chills I got, thinking I'd never in my life. And before I got to the WWE, I started working with Major League Baseball productions. I had covered all kinds of events, professional events, in boxing matches and everything. I never in my life experienced that type of energy in a building than when Hulk Hogan was there. And people, whatever argument anyone might have, you cannot deny what he did for wrestling at the time. And you can just see through the years as it's realized, because, Terry decided he wanted to see what else was out there, and Hollywood came calling, and Vince knew, geez, if he's gone, what do I got? What do we have?
And they
here?
tried to pass it on, didn't they? They tried Warrior, they tried Savage,
Yeah.
they tried all of these guys.
Brett.
Me and Adam talk about this all the time, and we're like, no one could do what Hogan done. And yeah, he wasn't the greatest in the ring, but the persona of Hulk Hogan, Hulkamania. And I say this to people all the time, till Stone Cold Steve Austin really come along, he was, for me, the next one that really got the baton of wrestling and went,
right,
I'm running with this. You had Brett, you had Sean,
and
you
The
had
Rock. That era changed things. But
if you think how long that was between that, in my opinion, no one really got near Hogan.
Yeah, absolutely not. And you saw how they'd had to bring him back because it just wasn't happening. And it was, no question about it, that without Hulk Hogan, there was no WWE. There really would not be. Not to that extent from what he did. He changed it. He made it mainstream. If people remember what happened back then, I was living in New York City at the time before I went to work for them. And I I didn't grow up with professional wrestling. I grew up in Tucson, Arizona. We barely got a show here and there. So I wasn't really all that attuned to the world of it. But I remember, rock and wrestling. I remember MTV. I remember, you know, uh, NBC getting involved, Bob Costas and all the Joe Piscopo and all these people getting involved in it. And when we used to do a garden show, we used to do them every month, if you guys remember,
Hmm.
in New York. And the backstage area was the who's who. It was celebrities everywhere that would just come because they wanted to be around these guys. So, and that was because of Hulk Hogan. He changed that. He made it okay. It wasn't this, go to the high school arena and for a few laughs. It was serious entertainment. Saturday night's main event was on network television. I mean, it wasn't like it was in the 50s where it was the sideshow or something that it was mainstream. It filled in for Saturday Night Live. So yes, that the long answer to that is there's nobody who is more responsible for the success of professional wrestling in the world than Hulk Hogan. And there's not even, I don't know how somebody would even have an argument about it. They can get
See,
into
Adam, when people
whatever
now
his
come back at
personal,
me,
whatever
I can
things that
say the voice
happened,
of
or
wrestling's backed me up.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. See, I appreciate that, but as when people talk to me about announcers, I say there's Gene Okerlund, and then there's the rest of us.
Hmm.
Nobody matches Mean Gene. There's
Great.
nobody from then till now that it just is never going to happen. There was one
Okay.
Gene.
Yeah, Mean Gene was great. There's one other wrestler I just wanted to quickly touch upon because he was around when Hogan, he was around when you was there, and the legacy that he still has, he's still obviously still with us, and he's still around now, is the Undertaker.
Well,
When you saw, obviously now Mark Calloway, because we now get that whole, we now see him as Mark Calloway now. He's got his
yeah,
own podcast and stuff like that. Did you, obviously on the outside looking in, could you sense how big of a star he was? Or is it just he just made that? Is it just someone that just fit the mold of exactly what that character needed to be?
you just said it. Absolutely. And when they match these guys up, and there have been many that were had the look, they could work in the ring, they had the drive, they had all, and never happened. But I remember with Mark when he came in. First of all, just his presence was just amazing, and the way he looked, he was just incredible. But I remember with the gimmick, the Undertaker, everything worked. That music, the gong. When I remember one of the first nights that he went out, and you could just see when that gong happened, people were just it got their attention like that, and then the big organ, and he comes out. Uh, he's the really, if I look back, he is the one superstar that when I saw him, I did say, this guy is going to be gigantic. I do remember thinking that. And I didn't always, there would be these gimmicks they give these guys that may have looked good but I would be going, I don't know about. And sure enough, it didn't work. But that one, man, they nailed from the start, and he's never looked back.
And
And
he
it's
lived
funny.
that character, didn't he?
Yeah. Yeah, oh, absolutely. And I was going to say, isn't it amazing that a superstar who never talked now can't shut up? And I
Kayfabe
mean
is
that,
definitely
and I
dead
mean
now.
that in a great way. I love him. You see how fantastic his podcast is,
Mm,
but I just find it so funny that this guy never talked, and and he's awesome in front of a microphone.
he's
So
brilliant. I remember Bobby Heenan. I remember Bobby Heenan's words when that guy, when Undertaker, I know he debuted before Survivor Series, but the first time we saw
Yeah.
him was at Survivor Series. And the word Bobby Heenan says when he was walking out was, "Look at the size of those ham hocks."
Yeah,
Being,
ham hocks.
being at his arms. But I mean, Bobby Heenan, another great guy to be around. I know you've touched on him,
Oh,
but that guy was just, I'm so, obviously it's so sad that he's no longer with us, but
no,
it's somebody that could do literally anything
anything.
in wrestling. That was Bobby Heenan. Was that your
Yeah.
you agree with that, Sean? Was that your
Oh,
recollection?
no question. He was a genius. Uh, I always thought that if he had chosen to become a stand-up comic or a comedian, a bit play or not a bit player, but a what do they call it? Character actor,
Yeah.
he would have been phenomenal. Bobby was master of the improv. I think that's if you were going to talk acting, that's what you'd say because you'd put Bobby in a situation and say, okay, you know this guy's gonna roll up in a Cadillac. He's acting like he's got a lot of money. Go, you know, tear him down. And that guy'd come out and get out of the car, and Bobby would just shred him with no preparation. It's just that he what he did. And I think one of the best examples, the classic examples, was the first night of Raw. When I was the first guy out of the street introducing the show, and then the premise of it is Bobby's been banned from the building.
Dressed up
Yeah.
as a
He's got
woman.
to try and get in, and he comes up. He's the Hasidic Jew with the hat and that stuff, and the old lady with the blonde wig, and we we never. I had gotten to be around Bobby long enough to, I loved being his straight man when I got the opportunity. But I knew enough and had enough trust in him that no matter what I did, no matter what he did, he would make it work. And all it was the setup is that Bobby's going to come up. He's going to be in a old lady wig this time. This time he's going to come up and he's going to be dressed with a hat. And he just went, and I just rolled, and that just showed the genius of Bobby. And it was funny. Everything that he did was funny, and he was the same way. Bobby never, and Gene was this way too. That they were the same people off camera too. A lot of times, and if you've been around actors at any point, where you have these guys that you see them on TV, and it's like, oh my God, they're unbelievable. Look at the vibrance, how vibrant they are in front of the camera, and then you see them off, and they're these very laid back, very introverted. No, that wasn't the case with those guys. So
Mhm.
whenever you traveled with them or whatever, you just watched. It was a traveling show. That anybody that came up to try and get an autograph, they'd have something to say to them. They getting exchanged, buying a bottle of soda or something. It was like it just didn't stop. And one of my favorite bits we ever did, if anybody remembers the Coliseum video at the golf course,
Oh, that was
where
one of
they
the
put Bobby
funniest things I've
right and
ever seen
Gene.
in my life.
Yeah. And Bobby had the old time golf knickers on with
Yeah.
the socks and the hat, and the premise was I was covering them, and I had a microphone with about a 200-foot cord on it so I could be everywhere with this mic. But the two of them, it was nobody wrote this stuff out. I think that people don't know that. Maybe they, but it wasn't. They said, "Here's the script, and here you go." It was, "Here's the scene, go," and it was just they would look for situation. Uh, there's a bunch of reeds in the grass. Okay, we're going to put Gene in there trying to find his golf ball, and then Bobby comes over and gives him, and it just went on and on. I remember laughing so much that day that a lot of times we would not be able to get through a take because we would break up. And that's just the way it was with those guys. It was, comedy genius with them. It was just nonstop. And I think that whatever stage they would have found, they would have been successful.
Mm. Sean, you mentioned there, obviously you were outside of the first ever edition of Raw. What was it like when they asked you to come back for the reunion, Raw, and you get to do that again, and we see you, for myself and Adam, fans that watched the first episode of Raw. What was that full circle moment kind of like for you when you? I remember watching it on live on TV, and I was like, "Please bring back some." And I saw you, and I marked out completely. And I turned to my wife, was like, "Guys, what are you doing? This isn't The Rock." I'm like, "Babe, I don't think you understand how important this man is to this business." For me, seeing him, what was that like for that full circle moment for you when you got to go back and do it all again?
It was really amazing because um, I remember when they came up with the idea for the show. Primetime had pretty much made its run. If you look back, Primetime was an awesome show
Mm.
with Bobby and Gino, and just sitting them at the desk. Again, those two just riffing, the phone and the stuff that Bobby would do, and that was another thing. Those two that they just went, and then we evolved to uh, the panel show that they had with Mr. Perfect, and Hillbilly Jim would come by, and I would do the event center off the set, and Bobby would give me grief the whole time. And then we did the live show, which was another great period of my life because it not only to do the experience in front of a live audience, but to work with Bobby in that way. But it had run its course, and so they were trying to figure out what can we do that's different. And they came up with this idea for Raw, where it was going to be in a smaller theater with seats that were basically on top of the ring. They were going to experiment having guys that much closer to the crowd there, and also just having that smaller venue, but where they just blew the roof off. You could feel the energy in there. But I remember thinking when we did it, well, I don't know if this is going to go because it's small crowds and well, who knew that after, all those years, it was still around. So the fact that I was the first person that anybody saw, it's, a lame trivia question, but the fact that they asked me to come back, and as you mentioned, the response that I got
Oh,
it
wow.
blew me away because I'd been away for a very long time, and they weren't doing a whole lot, so I wasn't asked to come back to do other things before that. So to go there and do that, and then also I worked with Daniel Bryan that night, which he was very hot then. So they gave me the opportunity to do something with him, and they said, hey, if you want to say something to the crowd, go ahead. So as I started, I said, oh, it's so great to be back. I appreciated that so much that they did that they let me do it. But it was a great thrill, and to meet a lot of those big time superstars that were there, John. And that was another thing and I took my son with me, which
Mm.
was very cool
Incredible.
because he was at the time, I don't know, about 12 or so, and he was a huge WWE fan. So to be able to have him backstage there, and you got to meet all these guys, I got to tell you the locker room stories of that one. But I remember, John Cena came up to me and just said, "Hey, man, I grew up watching you." That blew me away to think that I had people had seen me in that role. And I remember initially when I was trying to understand why people still cared, then I got it. I realized that I was part of their childhood. It was like being on a favorite sitcom or something, and you were part of the cast, and that was their escape to go and they'd watch this, and it took them away, and they dreamed about being a superstar or meeting Hulk Hogan, and I was part of that cast. So when people would come up to me and say, "Thank you, oh man, your voice, I just hear your voice and it takes me back." And I remember my dad used to take me to the arenas and see the shows. Then I got it.
Mm.
That makes me feel really good that I was a part of that, and it was like that was a really good part of their lives.
Yeah,
So
you are honestly. I know obviously you mentioned Mean Gene there, Sean, but you
yeah,
really, you're on that Rushmore of what we grew up with, in my opinion. I know Adams, you're on that Mount Rushmore of what we saw and what we still appreciate now today as a broadcaster, mate. So yeah, thanks for that.
oh man, I appreciate that. It's really nice for you to
And now,
say. And
obviously, back into now you now got an new action figure coming
Yeah.
out. How the surreal, and I can never, you see wrestlers on the front of video games and they see themselves. You're now going to see yourself in action figure format again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Surreal does that feel?
Well, this is guys, this is my first action
Yeah.
figure. I never ever, and I've been waiting, what is this, 30 years in the making, more than that? And because when I left, that they hadn't started making any kind of action figures with the announcers. It was just superstars. So Gene has a bunch of them, and I never had that happen. And I have people over the years that have made them just because they like to do stuff like that, and tried to get me to get behind them and everything, but they just weren't these great operations. But Hastel Toys is a great company. And they started, they kind of I don't want to say just people that really hadn't had the opportunity, that were great superstars that people love, but they didn't get the Mattel deal or something. And they've made these, and they are fantastic. I mean, I told you, I want to, if I can share the screen, I'm going to try. Let me see. No, it says host disabled participant screen share. So you won't let me.
Hold on. Let me see.
We can talk amongst
But
ourselves.
anyway, I wish I had one now. They just got here in the States. So now they are available. But I was hoping I could have one I could hold up for you, because it's very cool.
Try that now, Sean.
And there's nobody's more excited about it than my son. As I told you before, let's see if I can find it. Where is it? Let's see. Oh, there we go. Is that it? That's not letting me bring it up.
No.
But anyway, if you guys, I mean, if you look it up, it's Hastel Toy, and that's with HASTTEL toy.com. And they've got us right on the front page now. And there's a group of 6, and Lord Alfred Hayes is one of the figures. And when they first came to me, they asked me about doing this, and they wanted to do the one of basically me doing the announcer thing. So it's like
there
the
you
event
are.
center.
I've got you.
Can't see it. Yeah, we can't see. We got backgrounds up. They can't see it. But, yeah.
But anyway, so they wanted to do the announcer of me with the blazer, that I used to wear, that had the little WWF patch on it. And so I'm like, oh, that's cool. And they really did a lot of research to do it. And I look at it, and my wife looks at it. She's like, God, that does look like you. I mean, they really did a fantastic job. I think they could have added a few more muscles, but it's when they first sent me the prototype, and they put it on, I guess it's one of the standard bodies for the wrestlers, and it's like gigantic. And I said, well, could you beef it up a little? No, they go, Mooney, we have the announcer one that's going to be yours. But I just think they did a really great job. So I talked about, I said, why don't they do an announcer one too, of us doing play-by-play? And they have another model that does that. So they wanted, and I said, and Lord Alfred Hayes, I can't believe that they haven't done it. So he got in touch with his son. They figured out a deal there, and now the Alfreds are out. And they're going to have the ones of us with another set coming out together with us with the headsets on, doing the play-by-play that you can get.
Oh wow!
So it's really cool. I'm very, very, very happy about it.
We'll put the link on the
we'll
YouTube
get the link. Yeah,
so people can buy. They look brilliant. I'm looking at them now. Lord Alfred is amazing. Harvey Whippleman
looks good.
Yeah, you can buy them as a big set. And there's
229. It says on here 229. You can buy them all. I think you're going to be signing a lot of these when you come over.
Yeah, well, I hope so. I hope so. Please get them, and I will sign them for sure. No problem.
Sean, we mentioned
as well. Sorry.
Yeah, is it free UK shipping?
Yeah.
Sean, you mentioned announcers there. What advice would you give to the announcers of today? It's very much, I feel, back when you were doing it, and I'm guessing shows were produced, but now I've watched many a documentary, especially with the Vince McMahon era, of having someone in your ear constantly.
Yeah.
What advice? Yeah, exactly. I mean, first of all, how would you have coped with that if you're doing and you literally got someone in your ear, Sean, say this, Sean, say that, go to this, go to that. I think it was more you guys had a little bit more freedom, and you were trusted more, I'd probably like to say. First of all, how would you find being produced now in the product, and what advice would you give to these young upcoming pups?
Well, I'll tell you, Michael Cole deserves a tremendous
Oh,
amount of credit
Mm.
just for the fact that the length of time his career has spanned with the WWE. He's phenomenal. And then put on top of that, that probably for the last 20 of those years uh, before his departure, Vince would walk around with a headset, and his hip thing so that he could. And yeah, can you imagine that barking in your ear? And it wasn't like, okay, say that. It was like, what are you doing, guys? Could you imagine trying to concentrate?
mhm.
Well, I can't believe you said that. You know. So yeah, we didn't. I never really had to experience that because Vince wasn't high on his lordship and my play-by-play uh, for whatever reason. But we did have an opportunity to be in the booth a lot, which was great for those Coliseum videos. And I thought we just kept getting better and better together. I thought we made a really good team. Initially, sure, I wasn't very good at it. I had never really done it. I just kind of went off of what Alfred taught me, and I had some other great mentors with Gorilla Monsoon and listening to Bobby and how you play off people. Um, but the doing the announcing was fantastic for us that we got that chance. And a lot of those Coliseum videos where people over in the UK got a chance and got introduced to our product. Um, the way it worked then is just that we had a very limited staff at the time. So it was just get Mooney and Alfred. We lived in Stamford. So I got a lot of opportunities to not only host those videos, but also do a lot of events, a lot of charity events, a lot of other events, just because we were there. And whenever they needed somebody, like Freddie Blassie lived in the area, so I got to hang out with Freddie a lot,
Oh,
who I
wow.
loved to death. That's another podcast someday. But yeah, he was just wonderful. But in answer to your question, and this is what I tell everybody that, how do I do this? How do I get into this? Well, anybody looks at my career, I did not follow the storied path of what we were supposed to do to get into television or be in front of a camera or in front of a microphone. So what I tell them is just don't never quit, never let anybody tell you you're not good enough, and no matter what, it's a matter of you just believing that in yourself. That's all you got, and that doesn't matter. You got family members that tell you're not good or what the hell are you doing. So
You met my wife.
yeah, but it's true. And so if you talk to all these announcers, no matter what they're in front of a mic or a TV for, I guarantee you, they'll tell you that there were many, many, many people along the way that told them you're not going to be able to make this, and you had rejection after rejection after rejection, and you had terrible jobs and did whatever you had to do. But you know what they all have in common? They never quit. They didn't stop. They believed in it. Uh, you know, I remember I read a book on Al Pacino, of the actor, and he said that, you remember, an actor came up to him and he said, "Why did you succeed and I didn't?" And he said, "Because you wanted to succeed. I had to." And
Mm,
there's a difference there when there's nothing else in your soul that is going to make you happy or allow you to continue on. That makes a big difference. So the answer to it is, I don't care what your voice is. I don't care what you look like. There's so many examples of people, if you would have first seen them and they talked and you looked at them and said, no effing way. Well,
mm,
now the guy's a network broadcaster.
yeah.
So that's my advice when I talk to them, because there's no path. There's no way. I I worked for Major League Baseball as a producer. I worked for the WWF, WWE. Then I went to news. I became a news reader in uh, in New York a year after I left the WWF. When who would hire a wrestling announcer?
Hmm.
Uh, you know, so there's no path that you're supposed to follow. Make your own is
Yeah.
basically what it comes down to. But just don't quit.
Definitely
Yeah.
great advice.
Yeah.
Last one from me, just
Yeah.
real quick, Sean. I don't know. This is a hard one to answer. Did you ever think you would see a WWE without a McMahon at the helm?
No.
Mm,
Uh, well, let me answer that in a way that not that we wouldn't see a WWE without Vince McMahon, because at some point um, he just couldn't be there, whatever,
Yeah. Yeah.
death or
hmm
whatever. But I never imagined it continuing on and being successful without him.
hmm
So uh, now it's a different world. It's owned by a different company and Endeavor. The management there is very different. They have a different philosophy of what the company is. It's not the only entity now. They're owned by they have a ton of different entertainment outlets, but it's doing very well. You look about what it's doing throughout the world. So we'll see. But I will also say it was time.
hmm
I knew a lot of people inside, and still know a lot of people inside there. And at some point, and you see it in every facet of business,
Yeah.
it surpasses the person that founded it, that conceived it, that made it happen. You cannot discount what that man did for professional wrestling in every aspect. I mean, there's not an outfit in the world that doesn't owe something to Vince McMahon for them
Yeah.
having the
Agreed.
privilege to be a part of the world of professional wrestling.
100%. Yeah. It comes
But
back
I
to
will
the
say,
argument earlier, wasn't it, about Hogan? Without Vince McMahon, we haven't got the wrestling that we're talking about
yeah,
today. For everything that's going on now, me and Adam talk about this all the time. And people can argue, and rightly so, it's up for debate. And we're just wrestling fans. And I always try and say to people, without Hulk Hogan and Vince McMahon, we're not doing what we're doing now.
absolutely. There's
Yeah.
no question about it.
Mm.
Last one from me, Sean, before we wrap up. If you can tell us a funny story that won't get you in trouble from your time in WWE, or WWF, what one can you tell us?
Oh man. Uh, there are many. Um, Good Lord. I want to see I want to give you a good one because there are so many. Um, hmm. Within the WWEF. Uh, hmm. That's a good question that I won't get in trouble for.
Yeah.
You want to work tomorrow, Sean?
Yeah. Well, I'll relate it to the UK when and it's such a fond memory that Alfred and I were over there shooting. It was for one of the events. I think it was Albert Hall, Royal Albert Hall, and we were shooting wraparounds, and we went to this. We they got us these Sherlock Holmes outfits. You can imagine who I was, but I was Holmes, and Alfred had the hat and the trench and the pipe, and they found this glorious pub that we went to, and full of these guys that were just freaking funny as hell. And we shot a bunch of wraparounds inside this bar, and the intention wasn't to have too many pints.
Oh.
But as we wrapped up and we're with these guys, they singing and the jokes and the humor, which I vastly appreciate. I love English humor, and we ended up staying there probably much longer than we should have. And but we had an early call the next day. But that is one of my fondest memories ever. And I remember when we were getting ready we were leaving the pub, and Fred looked at me and said, Sean, and you know that he never swore or anything like that. He said, I believe we've solved the case.
Oh,
And we never
brilliant.
wanted to leave. But I still have the pictures of us in that, but that was a night I'll never, ever forget. And Alfred would never, as I said, he'd never swear. It was always,
No.
everything was, how unfortunate. But that night, There was nothing unfortunate about that night, but you can find that video. I think it's still out there. But if you know the background, we had a lot of Guinness that night,
Oh,
and I had,
amazing.
oh my God, did I have a hangover the next day?
Oh,
But
I
made it
can
through.
I can
Oh,
imagine.
amazing.
Sean, it's
Yeah,
been marvelous
yeah.
to chat to you. Now, for anyone that is going to For Love of Wrestling, 15th and 16th in Manchester over in the UK, you can see the likes of Sean Mooney. There's going to be a lot of legends
Oh,
there as
yeah.
well.
You see who's going to be there? They got
Jake Roberts,
Ric Flair,
Ric
Lex
Flair,
Luger
Sting.
is going to be there. Yeah, Sting,
Big.
Coco Beware. I think I
Yeah.
saw on there. Uh,
The acolytes, the APA, Bradshaw and Farouk.
Oh yeah,
Honestly, amazing.
JBL is going to be there, and and I'll tell you that these are they're all great guys. I mean, I got a chance to get to know Lex pretty well through the podcast and the journey that he's been on. He's just an amazing story. But
Oh man,
yeah,
I'd
it's gonna.
love to.
I'm
Yeah,
really
already.
I'm looking forward to the event, uh, very much so because like I said, I've been over there. Um, I'm really anxious to see the people there that watched back in the day
Yeah.
and hear their memories. So
It's gonna
I
be.
hope to
You're
see you
good.
there. Are you guys going to be there?
We're
Oh,
trying to.
yeah, we're
Yeah.
trying to get up there. my wife's at work at the minute, so yeah, I'm gonna try and
No.
come. Yeah.
All right. Well, if you
Yeah.
need a correspondent, you need to get me on the phone, boys. I'll call. I'll
No,
definitely I'll give you my number.
hang out with us, Sean. You'll definitely have another hangover.
Yeah,
Yeah,
boy.
yeah.
Okay.
That's the last one. But yes, you can catch Sean and a load of us, and you can also catch Progress Wrestling. They're doing For the Love of Progress over
Yeah.
in For the Love of Manchester that weekend as well. So you get to see some of the great British talent as on show as well over there, as
Well,
well as this man right here, Sean. But Sean, again, on behalf of me and Andy, thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you so much for giving up basically from our childhood memories of growing up.
oh,
Thank you for being the voice of our childhood in a lot of ways, and wish you a safe trip. We hope to see you over here, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon.
all right, boys. I hope we chat soon. Cheers.
Thanks, Sean. Andy, we'll see you again soon. And guys, we'll see you all soon on the Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast. Until next time, everybody, buckle down, stay safe, and goodbye.